No mai, haere mai, e te whānau. Welcome to the Flight of the Nix podcast. My name's Holly. I'm on Gadigal land in Sydney, where it is pouring with rain. Danny is also trying to avoid being wet. Today, with all of the rain, Alex is in Te Whanganui Atara, Wellington, and in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, we have Erin. We are going to do a women's season review today. I think that the season was a little bit disappointing, but let's start with I'll just run through the stats and players as well. So our visa players were Olivia Kelly, Maya McCutcheon, Olivia Ferguson, Carolina Villau, and Maba Tanaka. We also had Zoe McMeekin, Tiana Jaber, Mackenzie Barry, Grace Jale, Amelia Abbott, Alyssa Wynnham, Mania Elliott, Ella McMillan, Brooke Neary, Daisy Brazendale, Annalie Longo, Ella Jerez, Ella McCann, Olivia Ingham, Emma Main, Lara Wall, Amy Danieli, Rebecca Lake. And we finished 9th, 7 wins, 3 draws, 13 losses. We scored 25 goals, conceded 30 goals for a goal difference of -5. 24 points. The top scorers were Liv Ferguson, 5 goals, Mania Elliott, 4. Flea and Main Train tied equal on 3 goals. Jale and Maya with 2, and then goals from Liv Kelly, Alyssa, Maba, and Zoe. I think the aim was at least to make finals this season. It is deeply disappointing that we didn't do that, and I know we like to bang on about our away form, but when I was looking at the table earlier today, I noticed that our away form was actually better than our home form this season. So, initial comments.
I guess for me, my word of the season, if you like, or how it feels like, is not so much disappointing, but more frustrating. Yes, it was disappointing in the end up, but it was more frustrating than anything because we were so close to being, I think, a pretty decent side and getting a lot more of the results that we didn't get. I think last year, the ones that we lost, we probably deserved to lose and we probably didn't look like it. Whereas here, we know we were just one piece of the jigsaw puzzle away from probably being in the top 4, I think. And we know that is scoring goals. I'm sure we'll talk about that. So I found it more frustrating than anything. In terms of what happened, I was a bit surprised. Actually, I found out we did worse this season than last season because we just sort of seemed to tail off at the end, and I think that's why, because we had a lot of home games at the end, which we sort of all lost, which is why our away form ended up being better. Where I think realistically we were a much better side at home, but at the end of the season, it just tailed off, and we couldn't step up, we couldn't pick up and get a bit better, and we just couldn't score the goals that I think our play justified. And so for that reason, I found it more frustrating and disappointing as the season.
Yeah, I think this season has been pretty much like a failure on lots of fronts. I've been listening to a lot of the Yellow Fever podcasts, and they've had some of the higher ups on, which have been great to listen to. And it's kind of just given a bit more of a perspective on what goes into the women's team. And, how much investment actually is getting put into our women's team proportionate to the rest of the league. And it's high. We're up there with the top clubs in the league for investment on the women's front. They get the same facilities as the men, the same treatment as the men, which, that should be where everyone is. But unfortunately, it's not. And we're one of the only clubs that are there. And with that treatment, we still can't, even make top 6. I guess the kind of last season, we also weren't the best, but what I told myself is that we're improving and we were getting better season on season, and we've kind of broke that trend this season. And I think we actually finished with less points than last season and lower down on the table. So, yeah, some changes hopefully are needed next season. Hopefully we'll get them.
Yeah, I think on paper this team should have done so much better. I think you look at the pedigree of the players that we brought in the imports, and you've seen that they've played in the Champions League, they've played in the NWSL, they've played for some high-level teams, and just didn't really get anything from it. And I think that this was the squad going into the start of the season. I was like, we're definitely going to make top 4, and I feel like at times we played like a top team, and we were a team that was hard to beat. but we were getting beaten, and it just didn't make sense some of the times watching the games, and we were the dominant team and we looked better, but we just couldn't capitalize. We couldn't score goals, and we'd concede a lot of the times, concede worldies as well. That just a lot of the teams could pull out some top draw finishes and would lose on that. And yeah, just pretty disappointing to come away without finals again, and do worse than the season before when we really, really should have been quite convincingly in the top six.
I think, listening to those interviews on the Yellow Fever podcast, and I very strongly recommend that if you don't already listen to the Fever FM, which you should be, is to go back and listen to those, the interview with Temps, the interview with Gilly, and the interview with Domi, because they really do talk quite openly about how the seasons went. Obviously, Temps is on his way out. He did have a chat to them about just still struggling with the travel, and then every time you get, you have that high turnover of players, and then they have to get used to the travel as well. I think that was something that is really a drag, and it did take the men quite a long time to learn how to win overseas. I don't know what we can really do about that. They're already doing the same travel, like timings and stuff like that the men are getting. He also talked about needing a winning mentality, and I think once you get in your head like, oh, we're struggling away, it's really hard. But you're right. I think it felt like we went backwards. It felt like we went backwards this year.
Again, talk about frustration. I think we were very close to it all coming good, though. The margins are very narrow. I don't think there's much between a lot of the teams in the division, which, again, if you listen to how Dan were talking, they were just really annoyed because they thought they'd basically, off the pitch, they thought they'd done everything right and done better than other teams, and therefore they should work on the pitch. But the margins are so narrow that basically we were a goal scorer away from finishing top three. I looked at some stats, which really surprised me. We were number one in terms of accurate crosses of any team in the division. We were third in the number of shots on target, and yet we were 11th in terms of goals scored. So that tells you we're getting up there, we're getting good crosses in, we're having shots on target, but these shots are not good enough. They're not scoring. And okay, we could talk about Olivia Ferguson. That's her job to score more goals than she did, but goals have got to come from right across that front. And they didn't. People didn't score enough goals. I mean, to be perfectly honest, for someone like Charlie to score 2 goals, or even Flea to score 3 goals, that's not enough. They needed to be scoring more goals. And you can see those shots on target, how many of them were actually troubled the keeper. There were just so many seemed to be weak shots, from inside the area, which the keeper could just bend down and pick up rather than picking out corners and hitting hard. Yeah, that's obviously what cost us this season. It's cost Temple his job. And yeah, it's again frustrating because, again, one decent striker maybe, or more players better at finishing, we would have finished a lot higher up, and all that good work off the pitch we'd be saying, yeah, all that good work has paid off. But because of that, it hasn't. And it just shows you how close it is to be unsuccessful. You can do all the good things you like, all the stuff on paper, but just a small thing, like, well, a small portion of the football team, if you like. Defensively, we were pretty good. Midfield, I thought we were pretty good. But just one thing like putting the ball in it, which, yes, it's football, it's quite important. But that cost us so much.
Even just the fact that we only had 2 goal scorers who scored more than 3 goals across the season, which is absolutely dismal. It's an attacker's job to put the ball in the back of the net, and we only had Olivia Ferguson and Manaia Elliott kind of do that on more than a few times. It's really something that I think we should be targeting to build on next season.
As well, Longo's stat of having 52 chances created and only getting 5 assists for the season. What's happening with the other 47 chances? People, I feel like she got stitched up quite a bit. She should have been up there in terms of best player in the league, but we weren't scoring from her opportunities. She should have been assisting every single game, but we just weren't finishing off. She's putting them on a platter for people, and by kind of doing it all herself, I don't really know what much more she could have done.
Yeah, it's hard not to get the feeling that we've kind of wasted Flea in this season. If we could just have had when we had Mariana Speckmeyer or a striker that could finish goals and a functioning front three, who knows how good we could have been. And I think it's also a testament to Flea's kind of resilience. She came back from an ACL injury a couple of years ago, and she's not young. She's like mid-30s. And to come back from an injury like that and still be performing at the levels that she is just incredible.
Speaking of Flea, did you want to talk through who our players of the season were, Alex?
Yeah, so across the season, after every game, kind of the four of us and others in the Play of the Nix team, we give out free 2 and 1 points for the top performers for that game, and then whoever gets 3 points gets a Player of the Match plaque that we give them to them after the game. And lots of players really appreciate that. It's really nice to be giving those out at the end of the game and kind of connect with the players. And our player of the season who got the most points was obviously Flea. There was actually quite a big gap between first and second. I think she got almost double the points of anyone else. And then second was McCutcheon, who got a lot of points at the start of the season. And kind of midway through the season, it was looking like it was going to be quite a tight race for that first place finish, but McCutcheon kind of tailed off towards the end of the season, and Flea picked up. And then third place was actually tied between Wynnum and Jale, two great, players who can make chances. Wynnum also kind of dropped off towards the second half of the season, but I think we all kind of dropped off towards the second half of the season. And Jale was kind of like a bit of a rock in that attacking third. She kind of did a lot of stuff that went unseen, which I think is why we gave her a lot of points. Obviously, you'd like to see her contributing more to goals. I think she only scored 2 goals, giving more assists, which is what she's there for, kind of. But I think kind of a lot of that comes down to tactics and what she's been asked to do.
I think in games where Grace Jale played well, the whole team played well. And if she was maybe a little bit quiet, the whole team was quiet as well. I think that she was quite an important part of the team functioning and playing well. And I think that it was quite clear when she wasn't on her game, because suddenly it was absolutely chaos. And then when she was on her game, we were looking pretty good.
Yeah, I never knew which came first. Did we play well because Jale was playing well, or did Jale play well because the rest of the team were playing well? Grace Jale really, I'm going to say this word, frustrated again, but she did frustrate me this season because I just don't think she contributed as much as she could have done. She didn't score enough goals, I don't think, and yes, she was played all over the front, from wide on the wings to midfield to up front. So that must be difficult for her, but she still didn't score as many goals as we know she's capable of. And what's annoying is when she's good, she's magnificent. When she was on it, she's easily top 2 players in the league. There were a couple of times, patches in matches where she was utterly imperious. She just got the ball and did exactly what she wanted with it. And the fact that she wasn't able to do that in any way consistently throughout the season just really drove me up the wall. And it really wound me up. But there were a couple of games, I think, where she didn't start or didn't play, and we were absolutely less good when she wasn't on the pitch, even when she wasn't playing particularly well or being noticeably good. When she was on the pitch, we were an inferior side. So we had to play her, but I just wanted her to do more. Because we know she's capable of more, I guess, is the reason for that.
She actually scored triple the amount of goals that she did this season in our first season as a club, which is a bit ridiculous because, that side was arguably worse on every single front, and she still managed to score 4 more goals.
She's 13th in the league this season for chances created. That's not bad for the whole league. That's not too bad. to be honest. I don't know. It seems like either she's one of those players who, when you notice her shining, she shines so brightly. But did we want to talk generally about players? Obviously, we covered the Flight of the Nix player of the season, but how are you feeling about your favourite players, or players, how our visa players went, or players that you were hoping to get more from, but you didn't? Young players that you might want to mention?
Should we go around in a circle? Okay, let's do young player of the season first. My young player of the season is Nix Elliott. I just think it was a massive step up this season from last season, and I can see herself working harder next season, getting into the conversation about the Ferns. Even she was our second top goal scorer, and I think when she came off the bench and did well, she did really well, kind of in the same boat to Grace Jarley, but she was kind of one of our only players who offered something different off the bench. And, for that reason, she's my young player of the season.
Young player of the season is difficult because they're all really young, right? I think when they did the under-23 player of the season, that was like 90% of the team. So it's almost difficult to say. But for me, I loved Elliot as well. But for me, it would be Lara Wall. She came in, started the season. I think she's still on a scholarship contract when she started the season, possibly. And so she wasn't probably expected or to play or to start, and yet after 2 games she started, and after that I don't think anyone really considered anybody playing in her position apart from her. She just came in and was completely comfortable at that level, and I thought she was excellent, very consistent throughout the entire season. She did well, solid, got up the pitch a fair bit, and considering, as you say, she was a scholarship, we weren't expecting her probably to play too much this season. She was improved so well and just kept her level all the way through. So she's one that I can see going on to bigger things. Hopefully she will keep improving and move on to bigger things. And I thought she was a real find this season.
My young player of the season is also Nix Elliott. I think that she stepped up massively from last season, and she was quite impactful for the team when she came on. But I would like to give a highly commended to Daisy Brazendale, who was pretty solid, I feel. I feel like you didn't really notice her doing anything too wrong, which is good for someone in her position. I think it's kind of that CDM, centre mid kind of position is something where it's almost like a thankless job. You just kind of run around and you just have to be solid. And if you're not making mistakes, then you've probably done your job right. You're not expected to be kind of doing these crazy goals or any of that kind of stuff. And I think that she kind of came on and slotted in and did quite well and kind of did the job that she was supposed to do. So I'm going to give her a virtual medal for that one.
By the way, Lara Wall is like 25, so I'm not sure she counts as young player. She's one of the older players. She seems young because she's new, and she didn't play for us last season, so you just sort of have this assumption in your head that she's one of those crop of academy players. She was excellent. She was sort of the surprise package of the season in a way. You just think, they've gone and picked somebody up who's playing whatever domestically in New Zealand, and she was excellent. I think Mania did well. I think Zoe was always great when she came on. So one of the things that Temps talked about in the interview he had was how hard it is to effectively scout in women's football. There's nowhere near the amount of information out there, stats, videos, all of that kind of thing that there is for the men's game. Now, it is improving, but it still makes it really, really hard, including, some of those players have come out of the college system. It functions slightly differently there. For example, they have rolling subs, so players often don't play 90 minutes, ever. So it's really hard to compare apples with apples and to get the information. I think that Maya McCutcheon was a fantastic signing. I think they did really, really well there. I think Carolina also came good. There are a few mistakes here and there, but otherwise I think she was great. I think we were also going to talk about, players that were perhaps a little bit disappointed, and I think it was, I think Liv Kelly really struggled, and I think that as much as I like Liv Ferguson, and appreciate the work she does. She was just not fit for purpose for what we needed this season. So whether that's a scouting issue because they've not seen that this is the kind of player she is, or I don't know, maybe it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell, but I just sort of felt like there were two that I think went really well. Maybe also great, but I think we just they were a bit of a mess with Fergie being fit for purpose, and I just think that Liv Kelly, she struggled. We'll say that.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell with visa players because if you compare it to the men's side, usually they're on multi-year deals and usually they'll get maybe 2 or 3 or 4 years in the A-League. And, we've seen with visa players there that they're usually better in their second season. And we basically just don't have enough data to judge those players on because they don't play second seasons for us. Maybe Liv Ferguson is a player that would shine in her second season, getting used to the physicality and, the tempo of the league. But there's no way to know.
Yeah, I mean, as Holly said, McCutcheon was excellent and certainly beginning of the season looked like, wow, she's a real find. She's going to be one of the best players in the league. I think she plateaued a little bit maybe the second half of the season, but as we've said, so did most of the team. But, she was everywhere and she ended up playing in defence and she played in midfield. And she just ran around and got involved. And I think Temple in his interview said, I don't think he'd ever played 90 minutes before. She never did at college. And we throw her in and said, right, do the biggest running on the pitch and do it for 90 minutes. And she just did it. So she did very well. Liv Kelly probably wasn't as strong as you'd want from a visa player in defence. I think realistically, we probably didn't want to, waste or use a visa position there. If Rebecca Lake had been fit, I'm not sure we would have done. Liv Ferguson, again, worked really hard and was very good in attack apart from the scoring goals, but unfortunately that's what we needed for her to do because we didn't have anybody else. If we had a goal scorer up there with her, then I think she would have been excellent in the second striker, but we needed her to be a goal scorer, and that's just not what she did, and I'm not sure that's what she does. And Tanaka was sort of interesting. She always looked interesting coming on because she's got some skills and some technical skills there. But the fact that she wasn't starting every week sort of suggested that Temple didn't quite trust her to do that consistently over 90 minutes. He would sort of rotate her out with Emma Main or Manaya Elliott start of the season and sort of seem to settle on Manaya Elliott as a starter in that sort of wide position to the end of the season. I would be happy to see her again because I think she offers something that other people don't. So she gave something when she came on the pitch. I think overall, the visa players were probably weaker than they were last year. I didn't mention Villau either, who I thought was basically pretty solid. She was as good as pretty much any other keeper in the league. I think she's a very good keeper. I think I said before, if she was half a foot taller, she probably wouldn't be playing down here. She'd be playing over in Europe. But I think overall our visa players are probably slightly weaker this year than our crop of visa players last year.
Yeah, I think I mostly agree with what you've been saying. Maya McCutcheon, pretty decent find to kind of be let go from her team to explore other options from, I think, the North Carolina Courage. And Temple was good to sweep in and get her when we did. And I think Villar was pretty solid most of the season, except for maybe on the corner. She doesn't really like people getting near her. Maybe just needs to be a bit stronger up in the air and we'd be a bit better there. But I thought overall she was pretty on par, or if not better than a lot of the keepers in the league. Same with Liv Ferguson. I think, huge work rate. Always running, always chasing, but just lacks the finish that we needed from her, which was unfortunate. And Olivia Kelly as well, I think that she was a deadline day signing. We had our other import pull out after she saw us get absolutely pummeled by Western United in that first game, and she just flew the plane around. So Cheval went back to Canada or Algeria or wherever she went back to, and Temple had about a day to find someone to replace. She was initially a tall centre back, and so he found another tall centre back and didn't quite fit what we needed, I think. And I think with Tanaka, if you have your visa players on the bench, it's probably not the best use of a visa slot. She does have a good skill set, but I think she wasn't really what we needed to bring on, I think, for a lot of the games. And if we're going to be scouting from the MPL, we probably could have gotten an Australian who was as good, if not better, and still had a visa spot spare to bring in someone else.
Yeah, I think it's, I guess, an interesting point that perhaps we could have, if we were scouting from the NPL, found someone who was Australian or a Kiwi. But some of it, it's not just about the actual visa slots, it's about the cost as well. And I imagine that coming from NPL, that Maybar didn't command the same premium that we're probably having to pay for the rest of our visa players. Any other comments on particular players? I have to say, I was really disappointed that Bex got injured when she did. I think our defence would have looked a bit different. And then also entirely forgetting just about that Marisa Vandermeer didn't play a single second because she got injured as well. And I think, our defence with those two would have been really good to have those guys to circle in those positions and to have cover there. So I think that's sort of like one of those really big lost opportunities. I don't quite know how to put it, but absolutely gutting for them and a big loss for us. And when you sort of build coming into a season, these are the players I have, this is the way we're going to play, and then all of a sudden you lose a player that you're depending on or hoping to depend on all of a sudden, and you've lost them for the rest of the season, becomes quite hard to deal with that. And then it's either, well, do we try to find a player that's similar and what's available, all that sort of thing. It's tough.
I just want to jump in real quick and say we forgot Amelia Abbott, and it's typical because she's easy to forget. We signed her at the start of the season. She only came in towards the second half, and she barely played 20 minutes. She came off the bench a few times. I don't know if she started. If she started a game, if she did, I don't remember because she probably did nothing. And she was hyped up quite a bit because she was part of the under-17 squad, who did quite well, but not her apparently. Probably a bit of a waste on a player spot. And towards the end of the season, she wasn't even making the bench. I don't even know what happened.
She got injured all the time. I don't know. You started to wonder whether she sort of existed. Erin, I know that you were out joking about her, and it's about time she played. But yeah, it's pretty easy. Like I had forgotten. You almost forget that Bex signed. So it's that kind of season.
We seem to use. To me, we seem to a small squad of players. We seem to not go outside sort of maybe 15 players, possibly. So people like Amelia Abbott, you forget about it, and then they appear on the bench. You're like, oh, wow, look at that. Forgotten who she was. Or Ella Yeres. And we didn't seem to have sort of a big pool of players that we could pick from and go in. Or not that Temple trusted to actually do anything on the pitch anyway. I'm sure we have a lot of people in the academy. But, we were having obvious goal-scoring problems, but there wasn't somebody who can go, you know what, I'll pick someone out of the academy and put them up front and see what happens. We don't seem to have that big sort of depth, which is a little bit worrying. And again, if we talk about next season, who have we got that's likely to come in and step up? I don't really know because I haven't really seen many people this season whether they're able to do that.
Yeah, even with the academy people, I'm pretty sure Ella McCann, one of the Ellas, did her ACL as well at the start of the season, so she wasn't even available for selection, which cuts our squad down even more. And then you had Amy Daniele, who was in and out of the ins and outs every single week with a different injury. I think she was concussed at one point, and then suddenly she was just not around, and then Brooke Neary had to come in, and then Brooke Neary wasn't there anymore, and then suddenly Daniele was back for a minute. So there's a lot of movement happening around, and we kind of didn't really see many of those bench players, and it was mostly just the main squad who would play every single minute, and then maybe a 1 minute run for Amelia Abbott at the end or something.
Do you want to do a highlight? Your highlight of the season? I'm actually going to be naughty and have two highlights. One was when Alyssa Wynnum scored that really long range goal against Western Sydney Wanderers. That was a wonderful moment out there. we'd kicked off for the second half and we hadn't even finished our "Oh Wellington" chant, and she'd put it in the back of the net. And then beating Adelaide United at Unite Round, that was really great because we had such an awesome, same thing. We had an awesome bunch of people in the little corner of yellow and really, really enjoyed ourselves. Highlights for you guys?
The comeback against Newcastle Jets at home. Minai Elliott brace, Blongo goal, Olympico from the corner, I think. It's hard to beat that.
My highlight was Tiger Longo making the appearance, and then suddenly the team just picks up their mojo and just plays absolutely amazingly after that. There was some kind of magic juice that he brought onto the field.
It was, again, the Western Sydney game over here in Western Sydney. It was a game, obviously, I was able to go to. And we just completely dominated them. I think it was 3-0, but we had something like 42 shots. And it was just one of those games where everything we did came off. We were moving the ball around wonderfully. Jale was on form. Longo was running around. Wynnum had probably their best game for the Nix ever. And it was just great to watch. I mean, I know Western City are not the greatest side, but just seeing the kind of football we were capable of playing was just really good. And you went away from that and it's like, yeah, we're going to get to the finals. We're going to do something this season.
Probably should have started with the lowlights and then went to the highlights because, give the bad news first. But I think probably one of the worst things in the season for me was when we were getting really to that crunch time and it was like, we need to win these games. It's coming to crunch time. We keep talking about it in the pod. We need to win this game. We need to win this game. We're running out of times. And the loss to Sydney FC over here, that was really disappointing. Conceding that goal right in the end in stoppage time. Tiana getting herself a second yellow and getting a red card where we were sort of coming back into the game. There was still a chance after that, but it was sort of getting to the point where it was like, well, are we actually going to make this final push and make finals? That was quite deflating.
I think one of my lowlights is actually the last game of the season when Annalie Longo announced she was retiring. A really sad moment for the club, and it kind of made me wonder how we're going to do next season without her.
Yeah, for me, the lowlight again was that Sydney game. That seemed to, we didn't know at the time, but in hindsight, that's sort of when our finals push finished. It shouldn't have done, but that sort of kicked off a run of poor results, not necessarily performances, but poor results where we just started losing it. And it seemed to be such a self-inflicted defeat as well. Jaber got herself sent off. I mean, I do like Jaber, and I love the fact that she's feisty and combative, but obviously there's a limit to that, and that cost us. And letting Sydney, who have barely scored in the entire season up until then, come round and win that in the last minute was really galling, really disappointing. And I don't think we never really recovered from that.
My lowlight of the season was when Mariana Speckmeyer signed for Melbourne City. I never got over that, and it was all downhill from there. But my actual lowlight was that Sydney FC game as well. That was probably the must-win game to save our season, and they just didn't really perform, and then they never got back into it, and then it just didn't really look like they were going to make finals after that game.
It
wasn't even a must-win, it was a should-win because Sydney was so poor. And it was like, okay, so we're going to win this, so that's 3 points, and then after that, it's like, okay, well, now we have to start getting a result against Melbourne City or Western United, and that just got more and more difficult, and we didn't manage it.
I mean, we were careful to try not to count our chickens before they hatch, and Sydney FC is Sydney FC, but you're right that I feel like the fight kind of went out of us after that. Like we could have beaten Canberra and things like that. There were still opportunities, even if we were becoming less likely to make finals, but we just sort of fell off at that point.
I don't think we were counting chickens, but we knew how many eggs we had.
It just felt like we were barely fighting. The last game of the season, that was also really disappointing. It was like we weren't trying that hard. It was disappointing. Do we want to talk about looking forward to next season? All right. So Gilly and Domi both indicated in their interviews on Fever FM that they are going to invest more in the women's team this season. Now, obviously, We already invest a lot in a lot of ways. There are a lot of things that our women's team get that's on par with the men's team. And a lot of, like, for example, all of the staff, all of the coaching staff, physios, all that are full-time. Central Coast Mariners, which just won the championship, a lot of their staff are part-time for their women's team, and this is quite common elsewhere. So we do actually already invest a lot off the field. And it's disappointing to not get the on-field reflection of that. They have said that they are going to invest even more in our women's team, and they want to have, what was the phrase they used? I think Domi said have a crack at it. Basically, hopefully, where's my bargaining? Things will be better. You know, things will come right. Things will come right, Danny. Look at the bargaining. I'm bargaining, but things will come right. And we could potentially discuss rumours about our new coach. Amy Shepherd has been re-signed as assistant coach and will be the coach until late July. Hopefully there's a certain person who's coming off of her suspension in late July who would be an incredible coup for the club if we were to do that. Otherwise, your temps is gone. Don't know about Tori Shulkin because she was their assistant coach / analyst. I hope she sticks around. We were quite fond of her.
Tori's also in the academy.
Yes, okay.
And she does a lot of the academy stuff.
I think that also the idea that they were talking about, I think it was Gilly, about how, because a lot of those contracts, it's not just the players that get these shorter contracts, it's also coaches don't get full year contracts, even though they're basically working all year because they're recruiting. As soon as the season finishes, they're recruiting for the next season. So apparently they get folded into the academy duties partly in the off season. I'm not 100% sure how that works, but again, and like we've said, the last however many seasons, finals is a minimum. I don't know how we'll do without Flea. She's an enormous loss. We're going to have to figure out some way to have someone with that kind of heart and mana in the team. Thoughts for next season? Alex?
Yeah, hopefully we can make some good signings. Hopefully our new coach, maybe has earned a gold medal at the Olympics and maybe might be able to attract some great players, some great international players, maybe a football fern to replace Flea and kind of that leadership. And yeah, I think the main thing is our recruitment. And, if we get that right, the kind of attitude that's instilled in the team, winners mentality, Temps talked about a lot. And I think that kind of was almost the story of our season, that we didn't have that winners mentality. We need to be composed and, ruthless in key moments. And I think if the coach is who we think it is, hopefully they can help with that.
Yeah, it's interesting because we know the team is going to be very different, and that just seems to be the same year after year in the women's league. That's just the nature of it. So I don't know how many of our visa players will be staying on or how many will be going. But I suppose the good thing is that the club has sort of said we're not going to get outspent by anyone. So it's not like the men's side where even if we recruit well, we know we're not going to buy players on the level that Sydney FC or Melbourne Victory could buy. We shouldn't be behind anyone in terms of the level of play we can buy, except for maybe Melbourne City, because they're backed by Petro State. But other than that, it will be interesting to see how well we do that kind of recruitment. And if the coach is who we think it is, then you would think her contacts go wide and global, and we might be able to really get a very strong set of visa players in. In terms of the locals, again, I don't know of anybody particularly new that's coming through, so we're going to be relying on the players that we have stepping up and improving. I think Elliot, if she stays, the rumours that she's looking for overseas, but if she stays, and continues to improve, I think she can be very important. I was really hoping Emma Main would improve a lot this season. I don't think she's really stepped up as much as I would hope she would, but
She didn't play, mate. That's why. She barely played.
Well, she played most matches to an extent, and she scored some goals, which is why I'm not ruling her out completely. And I think she can get better, and she can offer a lot to the side. So I'm still hopeful for her. And then the enigma, which is Alyssa Wynnum, probably her last season to really prove that she can be someone who's very effective. We know she's got skills like no one else has. We know she can do stuff that other people can't. But what she sort of really is not really managed to do consistently is affect matches in a positive way. She, even when she's improved this season and she's had a lot of the ball sometimes and seems to be the ball our play goes through it, but just doesn't seem to be able to positively affect matches so much. So she's got another season, I think, to really do it, to really show that she can be that player that she looks like she should be when she's got the ball at her feet. But I think it's going to rely a lot on the visa players that will come in, and as Alex says, maybe even more professionalism from the new coach. I think Temp's stepped it up in the last couple of years, and he might go to an even new level now. So, look, I'm hopeful, but I don't really know what's going to happen.
I feel like we used to have a player who could probably have that kind of energy that Longo brings to the team, but we let her go, and then she's just won a championship with the Central Coast Mariners. So I honestly think Izzy Gomez was the one that got away for us. I really think that she hardly played, but I think that was partly due to us having to prepare for that home World Cup. So preparing to give some of the Kiwis more minutes, but we didn't give her game time, and she walked, and she's one of the best players in the league now. And I thought that she was good when she played for us, and I really wish that we kept her. But she's gone on and done bigger things, so good for her. But yeah, in terms of what I want to see from the team is, I think I hope that we can get some Ferns back home and bring them to the game and help to build the team. I know that there are some Ferns that have just lost their contracts or their teams have been relegated. We have Maya Han, we have Jackie Hand. Any of those kind of players would be great to try to bring to the league. I think it would be good to have a big name starting Fern in the squad. But other than that, I think of our starting lineup, we only have around 2 or 3 who have re-signed for next season so far. We have Lara Wall, Mania Elliott, and Winner are the only ones who have contracts, I think, out of most of those starting players. And so I guess we start by trying to build the team around what we have and hopefully build it better than what we had before, and maybe use connections of whoever our new coach is going to be to bring in some big players. But we need to just go kind of bigger and harder than we have for the past 4 years, because we need to make finals.
I think Gilly mentioned, I think it was 8 local players have been signed. So obviously some of them haven't been announced, but that was what he gave. And I think he said they were hoping to keep Maya, but that will be very hard to do. He mentioned, I think, spending good money on a Visa 6, a Visa 9/10, and a Visa centre back. I think, for me, in terms of trying to win a trophy, your return on investment is going to be better dollar for dollar going after the women's competition. The same amount of money that you spend will get you more improvement in a quality of women's player than it will in a quality of men's player. And I'm not saying we should neglect the men's team, but if we want to win something, I think that the dub is a good spot to target. And hopefully if we do get a good coach, then we move from there. I would love for us to win the league. And it's doable. Little clubs can win the league. Look, and congratulations to Mariners, honestly, and congratulations to Izzy, who obviously played 2 seasons for us. Played a fair bit of the first season. The second season, I think she kind of fell out of favour with the coach, even though I think she would have been the answers to some of our second season problems. But I am maybe slightly biased because love Izzy, and her family are great as well. But did you see the penalty though? Oh my goodness, that was shocking, but so good to see. So this is the thing, is you don't have to spend a fortune, but it is a good place to spend money.
Bring Izzy home? We start a hashtag? How much would it take?
I think she's pretty happy on the coast. I'd love to have her back in a heartbeat.
There's always a number, right? There's got to be a number. There's
got to be a number. But look, I mean, she lives at home, and she does seem to have thrived. Really, really thrived at the Mariners under M. Husband. So yes, someone I would love to have back, but I wouldn't think so. Oh, she's hopefully going to get her Matilda's debut soon. Oh,
I feel
love
like
that lady.
she was halfway to New Zealand with that offside anyway, so
Oh, that was okay. Yeah, that's true. I don't feel bad about like City being cheated out of the league. They did go undefeated, apart from a semi-final relief. Yeah. Teams did talk about the quality of the officiating when he had a chat to Fever FM about how it probably needs to be improved a little bit. People say that about every league, if you're a fan. So I don't know how much to really read into that.
I would agree with that. I don't think the officiating was great, and that's not to slag off the officials. It's to criticise the amount of investment that goes into training officials. And if I was a league head honcho with a bit of money, I would certainly be something I would be looking at, trying to train up the officials, giving them chance to become better, because I really do think it was quite poor at times. And yes, obviously the decisions go against you, etc. But there were some really poor decisions both ways, where it was just obvious, not just Izzy Gomez is offside, but we saw quite a few during the game. And just overall, I think it'll need to improve if they want the women's league to improve.
They have day jobs. They all have day jobs, and that makes it really hard to improve. And also, there's no VAR, so those sorts of mistakes, like how far Izzy seemed to be offside in that semi, that would be pulled back if there was VAR. Obviously, VAR is expensive, and then it starts to seriously restrict the stadiums that you can go to and use.
I would prefer the investment into actual referees rather than VAR, and I'd prefer that in the men's competition as well. Take all the money you're putting in VAR and train referees, or allow referees to train more frequently or better. Let them go. Semi-professional if that's what the money we've got.
I still feel a bit ripped off about Mickey Robertson's offside last season
against the Raw.
Yeah,
absolutely scammed.
Exactly.
I heard that I know she's quick, but I heard from people who were in the stadium that she was probably offside. I feel more angry still about that red card that Riley Foster got for her brutal attack on Sophia Christopherson, who somehow survived and is still playing. Also that really bad handball against Brisbane. We cop it against Brisbane. Anyway, there's always room for improvement. I think one of the big ones is across the league trying to get to full-time contracts or like full-year contracts. I believe the Nix are going to try to add 2 more weeks onto contracts for getting for the women to get more pre-season in. But I think those are the fundamental problems with the game, is actually just getting people that this is their full-time job and that they have that job all year round and they're not having to split their time with other things. So what position are we finishing? It's got to be top 6. But I'm going to be faithful. I'm going to say we're going to win it all. We're going to win everything that can be won next season. I'm sure of it.
I'll go top 4, just due to the investment that's been shown, and the faith from Domi, and the ambitions from the board. I think that will really go far, especially in the women's league.
We're winning the whole thing. We're going invincible. You heard it here first.
Top 4, top 2 if we can get Izzy to come home.
Get your money to the pokies, people.
I bet our odds are horrendous. But yeah, maybe we all need to make a punt on us finishing first. Or, you know what? Put the punt on us finishing last, and then at least if we finish last, there's a silver lining of winning your bet. No, I'm not a gambler.
You can't bet against your own side. That's that way madness lies.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on our meandering cover of the women's season. We will be back to discuss next season when that comes around, which is a really long way away because we have a very long off season. We will be back soon also to discuss the men's season and wrap that up. Thank you. Matua.